This was New Year's Eve in 2021, and I was 20 at the time. I was doing DoorDash because my regular job had cut my hours, and I needed the money badly enough that I didn't care what day it was. New Year's Eve was supposed to be good. People tip more. People don't want to leave the house. That's what everybody says. By 10 o'clock, it already stopped being fun. Every restaurant was behind. Half the orders were wrong. The app kept trying to send me to places that had been closed for an hour, like DoorDash hadn't gotten the memo. I was tired and hungry, and my phone battery was dropping fast because I had it on full brightness so I could see the map. I was dashing in Georgia. I'm not going to say where exactly because I still live in this state and I'm not trying to invite weird attention. But it was one of those areas that goes from normal suburbs to nothing in about 5 minutes. You'll be passing strip malls and then suddenly it's woods and 2-lane roads with no streetlights. Around 11 o'clock, I got an order from a wing place. The pickup was normal. Staff looked like they were ready to quit on the spot. I stood there waiting while a guy in front of me argued about ranch cups like it was a court case. I remember checking my phone and seeing my acceptance rate had dropped because I kept declining stuff that was obviously going to be late or not worth it. I got the bag and walked out into the cold air, and it felt good for about 2 seconds. The customer name was Tina, and the drop-off was listed as a house. The tip looked decent. It wasn't huge, but it was enough that I accepted without thinking too hard. The drive started normal, then the roads got darker. No other cars. The fireworks had already started. You'd see flashes above the trees and hear pop here and there, like somebody was setting them off from behind their garage. It wasn't constant yet, but it was building. I pulled into a neighborhood that didn't feel like a neighborhood, more like a long road with spaced out houses that were all set back deep from the street. Some had long gravel driveways, a few had gates, and a lot of them were just dark. The app told me to turn down a side road that was even darker. It didn't have a street sign, just a narrow road and a mailbox cluster. I remember thinking, DoorDash really expects me to go down here at 11:30 at night. Well, I went anyway. My car's headlights caught fog off the ground in patches, the kind that makes it feel like your lights are weaker than they are. I drove slowly because the road wasn't great and I didn't want to hit a deer. When I finally got to the address, the house didn't look lived in. No porch light, no cars in the driveway, no Christmas lights, nothing. The only thing I could see was the outline of the house and a tree line behind it. The driveway was dirt and had potholes. I pulled just far enough off the road to not be sitting right on it. The instructions said, "Hand it to me." I sat there for a second staring at the screen, because usually if a place is dark, they have leave at the door, because they don't want interaction. Handing it to me at a dark house just felt wrong. I did something I didn't normally do, and I wasn't trying to be rude, but also didn't want to get out of my car and be murdered. So I texted, "Here." Then I waited. Nothing. I texted again, "I'm outside. Anyone home?" But still nothing. I hit the call button. It rang once and then went to voicemail. I looked at the house again and told myself maybe they were drunk and slow. Maybe they were in the back. Maybe the porch light was broken. All those things I've told myself 1,000 times doing deliveries at night. I grabbed the bag and got out. I walked up the driveway with my phone flashlight on. I felt stupid doing it, like I was walking into my own bad decision. The front porch was small. I saw an old welcome mat. I saw a couple of dead leaves piled in the corner. I didn't see any sign of someone being inside. No TV glow, no movement. I knocked quickly and waited. Knocked again, a bit harder. Still nothing. I stood there holding wings like an idiot, listening. I looked back toward my car, and that's when I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. There was another vehicle parked on the side of the road, behind my car. I didn't hear it pull up. It was just there, dark with its lights off. I couldn't even tell what kind it was. All I could see was the shape. I stepped off the porch and walked down the driveway fast, trying to act normal. When I got closer, I could see the driver's door on the vehicle was open a little, like somebody had just gotten out. The inside light wasn't on, which made it worse. I got to my car, put the bag on the passenger seat, and went to grab my keys, even though they were already in my hands. I had that feeling like my hands didn't work right. I started to get in and I heard a voice behind me. "Hey." I turned around and saw a guy standing in the edge of my headlights. He wasn't in the driveway. He was closer to the ditch, like he'd come from the side, not from the house. He was wearing a hoodie with the hood up, hands in his pocket, face half lit, half in shadow. He didn't look drunk, but he didn't look friendly either. He looked calm, like he'd been waiting. "You got my food?" he said. I didn't like that he said "my," because the order was under Tina. I'm looking for Tina, I said. He smiled a little, but it wasn't a normal smile. That's my girl, he said. Just hand it here. I hesitated. Every part of me wanted to just give him the wings and leave. That's what you do, avoid conflict, get out. But the whole thing felt off. The house is dark, the phone is going to voicemail. The random car behind me with the door open. The guy is coming from the side instead of the house. I said, I need to confirm the name. He took a step forward. Man, just give me the bag. I stepped back toward my driver's door. I can't, it's a policy. That wasn't even true, I just needed something to say. He took another step forward and I noticed something in his other hand that he hadn't had out a second ago. It was low near his thigh and hard to see, but it looked like metal. Maybe a knife or maybe a short crowbar. Something like that. He said, You don't want to make this weird. I was already making it weird. I got in the car fast and slammed the door. I hit the lock button without even thinking, started the engine, and my hands were shaking so bad that I missed the ignition the first time. I can laugh at that now, but in that moment, it felt like the world was slowing down. He moved toward the front of my car, and I thought he was going to stand there and block me. Instead, he went around toward the passenger side like he was going to open the door. I threw the car in reverse. The tire spun in the dirt, and it didn't move at first. My heart dropped. I hit the gas harder, and the car lurched back, bouncing over potholes. I heard something hit the side of my car like a hand slap or a fist. He was close enough that he could touch it. I reversed out crooked, barely missing the ditch, then slammed it into drive and shot forward. In my rearview mirror, I saw him jog back toward the dark vehicle like he wasn't even rushed, like he knew he'd still be fine. I kept driving and didn't slow down. I didn't even look at the app. I just drove until I hit a main road of lights. Then my phone buzzed. DoorDash notification. The customer reported the order not delivered. I almost laughed. I actually said out loud, Yeah, no kidding, man. The next thought was that I should end the dash and go home. Smart move was to go home. But I didn't because I was broke and my brain does this thing where it tells me if I quit that I'm weak. It's stupid, but that's what it does. So I pulled into a gas station parking lot, hands still shaking, and tried to calm down. I sat there watching cars come and go, pretending I was okay. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't call anyone. I just sat. Then my phone pinged again. Another order. It was from a different restaurant. Same general area. I declined it. Then another order popped up, and another. Each one paid more than the last, like the system was trying to bribe me. Then I got one that made my skin go cold. It was from the same wing place, same neighborhood direction. For Tina. I stared at my phone like it was joking. The payout was high, way higher than it should have been. I declined it so fast that my thumb hurt. It popped back up again, like the app didn't care what I wanted. I declined it again, and it popped up a third time. That's when I realized something I hadn't let myself think about yet. I'd been out there late. Most drivers had probably logged off. Most places were closing. If somebody wanted to set up a delivery driver, New Year's Eve was the perfect night. Noise everywhere, roads empty. Everybody is distracted. I ended my dash right there in the gas station lot. I didn't even care about the money anymore. I drove home, and when I got back safely, I sat in my car for a minute before going inside. I watched the street like I expected that dark vehicle to roll by. But nothing happened after that, and nobody followed me. Nobody showed up at my door. But I kept thinking about how close it got and how dumb I was for walking up to that porch in the first place. How easy it would have been for that guy to get the passenger door open, or for my tires to get stuck on that dirt driveway, or for me to trip and fall. The scenarios are endless. I'm just really glad I was able to leave when I did, because I don't think that situation was about chicken wings. So let's go back to New Year's Eve in 1996, when I was 23. I grew up in Indiana and I still live here, but at that age, I thought I knew the back roads better than I actually did. That night, I was driving from the south side of Indianapolis, out toward my cousin's place near Greencastle, where my whole family was doing a New Year's thing. I left later than I wanted because my dad had me help him mess with his snowblower, even though there wasn't much snow. He was the kind of guy who'd spend an hour getting ready for something that might not even happen, so I remember my mom yelling from the kitchen, "You're going to be late again," and my dad yelling back, "It'll start on the first pull, you'll see." It didn't. By the time I got in my car, it was already dark and I was already annoyed. I had an '88 Oldsmobile Cutlass that smelled like stale fries because my buddy Derek had spilled McDonald's all over the passenger seat a week before. The heater worked, but only on 2 settings. Nothing in full blast. I had a tape in. Something dumb. Probably Hootie. and my dashboard clock never held the right time, so I was guessing it was a little after 9. The plan was simple. I-70 west, then off toward Greencastle. Easy. But it was New Year's Eve, and I started seeing more and more taillights the closer I got to the interstate. There were stretches where it felt like everyone in Indiana had the same idea. I remember thinking I'm going to spend midnight staring at brake lights. I had one of those early GPS units, a big clunky suction cup thing. My uncle had talked me into buying it because he thought it was the future. Half the time it just guessed, but I figured it might save me from traffic. So when I hit a snow patch near Plainfield, I took an exit I didn't really know. I can't tell you what number it was. I just saw a sign for a county road and thought, fine, I'll go around. At first it worked. The highway noise faded behind me. The road narrowed, and suddenly it was just me, my headlights, and those dark Indiana fields that go on forever. Farmhouses sat way back from the road with one porch light on, like somebody left it for a dog. I passed a gas station that looked closed, even though the lights were on inside. I almost stopped anyway, but I told myself I'd just get to my cousin's and grab a beer. And the GPS did that thing it used to do when the arrow freezes, like it's thinking. I tapped the screen, still buffering. The arrow stayed pointed straight, even when the road curved. Then it flashed a message about losing signal and went blank. That was it. No phone, no map. Just me in a car that I suddenly didn't trust as much as I did 10 minutes earlier. I kept driving because that's what you do when you don't want to admit you made a mistake. I told myself I hit a main road again, or I'd see a sign for US 40 or something familiar. Instead, the fields turned into woods. Not pretty woods either. Dense black trees close to the road, with the kind of narrow shoulders where if you pulled over, you'd be halfway in a ditch. I remember seeing a sign for a creek. Big Walnut Creek, and thinking, okay, that's around here somewhere, but I couldn't place it. The road twisted more than it should have. I saw a mailbox cluster once, but no houses. It felt like the roads were built for nobody. After a while, I realized I hadn't seen another car in maybe like 20 minutes. No headlights, no taillights, nothing. Just my own engine and the tires on that cold pavement. I tried turning around, but the road had no good spots, so I kept going until I found a place where a dirt lane cut off and gave me enough room. I started a 3-point turn, messed it up, backed in a rut, and my rear wheels spun for a second before catching. That's when I felt that little flicker of panic in my chest. Not full panic, just that moment where your brain goes, if you screw up right now, you're sleeping in your car. I finally got turned around and started heading back the way I thought I came, except everything looked the same. I passed the same kind of trees, the same curve, another creek, another dark stretch with no lights. Then up ahead, I saw somebody walking. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me because who walks out there at night on New Year's Eve? But as I got closer, I could see him clearly in my headlights. A man, alone, wearing a dark coat and what looked like a hat. No reflective anything, just walking right on the edge of the road like he didn't care if he got clipped. My first thought was, don't stop. My second thought was, maybe he's lost too. I was lost. I didn't have a phone. If my car died, I'd be stuck. And the truth is, I felt weirdly relieved to see another human being, even if it was in the worst possible place. I slowed down and rolled my window a little bit. Cold air punched into the car immediately. Hey, I called out, you alright? He stopped walking and turned his head toward me slowly, like he was thinking about whether he should acknowledge me or not. He stepped closer until he was standing in the beam of my headlights. Couldn't see his eyes well because the brim of his hat shadowed his face, but I could see his mouth. He was breathing hard, not like he'd been jogging, like he'd been holding his breath and finally let it out. He leaned down a little. You lost? His voice was rough, like he smoked or chewed tobacco at least. He didn't sound scared. He sounded annoyed, like I'd interrupted him. Yeah, I admitted. Trying to get to Greencastle. I took a shortcut off 70 and I made a vague gesture instead of finishing. He knew what I meant. He stared at me for a long second, and I remember noticing something stupid. His coat was way too thin for how cold it was, like something you might wear in October, not late December at night. I can get you out, he said, but I need a ride. Every alarm bell in my head started going off. I was raised in my mom's paranoia. She was the type who locked the door the second you got in the car, even in your own driveway. If she could have seen me right then, she would have slapped me through time. But I also didn't know where I was. I didn't know if the road behind me was the right one, and I didn't like the idea of driving aimlessly for another hour until I ran out of gas. What's your name? I asked. He didn't answer right away, just kept staring. Then he finally said, Cal. Where are you headed, Cal? Doesn't matter, he said. Just give me a ride and I'll tell you where to turn. I should have left, I know that now, but I also had that dumb 23-year-old confidence, and I told myself I could handle it. I told myself if he tried anything, I'd just slam the brakes and kick him out. Like that's how real life works. I unlocked the passenger door. He got in without saying thanks. The second he shut the door, the car felt smaller, like the air changed. He smelled like cold fabric and something sour underneath, like sweat that dried and came back. I kept both hands on the wheel and pulled forward. All right, I said, just tell me. Keep going, he said. We drove in silence for a minute, but I could feel him looking at me, not casually. It was a consistent staring. I kept my eyes on the road, but every few seconds I'd catch his reflection in the side window, his head slightly turned toward me. Left up here, he said finally, right as a narrow road broke off into the woods, and I turned. The road got even darker, if that's possible. Trees arched over it in places. My headlights barely reached beyond the next bend. Are you sure this is right? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, You're in a hurry to see your family, huh? It wasn't a question, it was like he already knew. Yeah, I said, trying to sound normal. Cousin's party. He nodded slowly, like he was tasting the word. Party. We drove a little farther. Right, he said. I turned right on what looked like a road that barely got used. The pavement was rough, the yellow lines were faded. What road is this? I asked. He stared out the windshield. Doesn't have to have a name. That's when I started planning in my head. Not dramatic planning, just small stuff like if I see another house, I'm stopping, or if I see another car, I'm honking. If he reaches for anything, I'm done. A few minutes later, he spoke again, still in that same flat voice. People get careless tonight, he said. What do you mean? They think the year changing means something changes, he said, like it wipes the slate clean. I didn't answer. My throat felt dry. He kept going, like he was talking to himself. They drink, they wander, they pull over, they open doors for strangers. My hands tightened on the wheel. Cal, I said, keeping my voice even. Where are we going? He turned his head and looked at me full on. I caught a glimpse of his eyes then, just for a second. They looked wrong. Not glowing or anything stupid like that, just too calm, too awake. Like he'd been waiting for this. Straight, he said, then left. I drove straight. My heart was pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my ears. I told myself that I was going to stop at the next open spot and tell him to get out. I didn't care anymore if I was lost. I'd rather be lost, alone, than trapped in a car with him. I started slowing down, scanning for a driveway or a clearing. The road was nothing but trees. No shoulders, no houses, no lights at all. That's when he moved. It happened fast enough that I didn't even understand it at first. His hand shot out and grabbed the steering wheel, and he yanked it. The car jerked to the side. My tires hit the edge of the pavement, and then we were in the ditch sliding. The world turned into a blur of branches and white snow patches. I remember the sound more than anything. Metal scraping and glass popping, and my own voice yelling something that didn't even sound like words. The next thing I remember is waking up with my face pressed against something cold. My airbag had gone off, and the inside of the car smelled like burnt dust. My ears were ringing. I tried to move, and pain hit my ribs like a hammer. A flashlight beam was shining through the broken driver's side window. Hey, a man's voice shouted. Hey, can you hear me? I blinked and tried to focus. A stranger was leaning in. Middle-aged, big coat. He looked terrified, like he'd pulled up expecting to see a dead body. Don't move, he said quickly. Wow, don't move. I thought you were gone. I tried to speak, but it came out as a cough. He turned his head and yelled back toward the road. Call it in. Tell them we got one awake. Only then did I notice another car parked behind mine with its hazards blinking. A woman stood near it, hands to her mouth. My head felt like it had cotton stuffed inside it. I looked toward the passenger seat. It was empty. The passenger door was cracked open, hanging weird. The seatbelt latch was snapped. There was a smear of dirt on the dash, like somebody had braced themselves there. Where's... I tried to say. The man leaned closer. Where's what? Somebody was with me, I rasped. His face tightened, and he glanced into the car like he was checking if I was imagining things. I didn't see anybody, he said. We came around the bend and you were already in here. No other cars, nobody walking. My stomach dropped, and it wasn't from the crash. Sirens came in the distance, muffled through the trees. The stranger kept talking like he was trying to keep me awake. He told me that his name was Ron and that he and his wife were driving back from a friend's place and that they almost missed my car because it was so far off the road. He said if they'd been 10 minutes later, he don't know if I'd still be breathing. The ambulance lights finally flashed through the woods, blue and red against the tree trunks. EMTs pulled my door open and started asking me questions. My name, the year, and where I was headed. I answered what I could. I remember one of them saying, "New Year's Eve, huh?" Like he was tired of that night already. At the hospital, they told me I had cracked ribs, a concussion, and that the nasty cut on my forehead needed stitches. The doctor asked if I'd been drinking. I hadn't. He asked if I fell asleep at the wheel. I told him no. I told him somebody grabbed my steering wheel. A deputy came by later and asked me to describe the man. He said his name was Cal. He said he was wearing a dark coat and a hat. Also said that he smelled like sweat and cold cloth. And that he talked like he didn't care if I lived or died. The deputy wrote it down, nodded, and gave me that look people give you when they're not sure if you're lying or just shaken up. He said they checked the area in the morning. But nobody ever called me back about it. Nobody found Cal, if that's even his real name. Nobody found footprints, no one found a coat, nothing. Just my car in a ditch and my story. A cousin's party came and went without me. My aunt told my mom later that everyone thought I blew them off, but my mom didn't even correct her. She was too busy sitting next to me, in my hospital bed with her arms crossed, staring at me like she wanted to yell and hug me at the same time. Every New Year's Eve since then, I take the main roads. I sit in traffic if I have to, and I don't care. And if I ever see somebody walking alone on a back road at night, I'll probably just keep driving. This happened on New Year's Eve, in I believe 2013. And if my quick math is correct, I would have been 31. I was living in a small rental house outside Fort Collins, Colorado, in a neighborhood that was half older families and half younger people who did bonfires and played music too loud on weekends. My dog Milo was a mutt that I picked up from the Larimer County shelter a couple of years before. He wasn't a tough-looking dog, more like medium-sized, tan, big ears, and the kind that looks worried if you raise your voice. But he was smart, and he was the most consistent thing in my life at the time. If Milo barked, there was a reason. If Milo ran from something, I listened. He wasn't dramatic. He was the opposite. That night, I wasn't doing anything special. My girlfriend at the time, Kara, was working a shift at the hospital. My friends were all doing parties downtown, but I'd had a long week and I didn't feel like being around drunk strangers. I planned to stay home, drink 1 or 2 beers, maybe watch the ball drop on TV, and be asleep by 1. I remember the small stuff more than anything. I burned frozen pizza because I forgot to set a timer. I had a cheap bottle of champagne in the fridge that I probably wasn't going to open. I had the heater cranked up and still wore a hoodie because the windows in that place leaked cold air. Milo kept pacing because he could tell something was different. He always did that on nights with fireworks. Around 11:30, the neighborhood started waking up. You could hear people outside, car doors closing, and somebody yelling for someone else to hurry up. Music started somewhere down the street. A few early fireworks went off. Milo lifted his head every time, ears twitching, and then settled again when it went quiet. At about 11:50, I took him out to the backyard because I didn't want to deal with him needing to go right at midnight. Backyard wasn't big. Chain link fence, patchy grass, and one scraggly tree in the corner. The neighbors behind me had a tall wooden fence, so you couldn't see into their yard. Milo did his thing, then came right back to the door like always. I let him in, gave him a piece of leftover chicken I had in a container, and put on the TV. The countdown started. I wasn't really paying attention. I had my phone on the coffee table, but it was basically useless for anything other than checking the time. The reception in that house was terrible. I could barely make calls inside unless I stood near the front window. At 11:59, the noise outside got louder all at once. People yelling, fireworks popping in different directions. It sounded like the neighborhood was outside. Milo started pacing again, nails clicking on the laminate floor, and I kept telling him, "You're fine, dude. It's fine." Like dogs understand words the way we want them to. When the TV hit 0, I heard somebody on my street blow one of those cheap horns. Then the fireworks really started. Not just little pops. The kind that crack and rattle your windows. Milo did his thing where he stood very still and stared at the back door. I figured he wanted to go out again because the noise freaked him out and he was restless. Sometimes he'd do that. Walk around the yard like he was checking it, then come right back. So I clipped his leash on and opened the back door. Cold air hit my face and it smelled like smoke already. Milo stepped onto the porch and for a second he looked normal. Then he stopped. He didn't pull or whine, just froze. I gave the leash a little tug to signal that he needs to come on. He took one step, then stopped again. His ears went forward and his head lowered like he was trying to see something in the dark. The backyard was lit by one dim porch light and whatever fireworks flashes were bouncing off the clouds. "Milo," I said again, more annoyed than worried this time. "Go. Hurry up." He didn't move. His tail went stiff. It was a look that I'd seen maybe once or twice when we ran into a loose dog on a walk. That alert, locked and stare. I started to feel uneasy, which might sound dramatic, but it wasn't like a panic attack or anything. It was more like that quick internal shift from, "this is annoying," to, "okay, what's he seeing?" I stepped out onto the porch beside him. First, I didn't notice anything. Just smoke drifting over the fences, flashes in the sky, and distant shouting. Then Milo let out a low growl. Not his normal "someone's at the door" sound. This was quieter, like he was warning about something without wanting to give his position away. That's when I saw movement near the far corner of my yard by the tree. Not really a person standing there, more like a shape crouched low behind the tree trunk, half hidden. I couldn't see details. I could only tell something was there because it blocked a tiny patch of light and moved wrong compared to branches. I stood there trying to make sense of it. Fireworks went off and lit the yard for a split second, and I saw what looked like a shoulder and part of a head. A hood, maybe. I pulled Milo back toward the door without thinking. He resisted, which he never did. He planted his paws and leaned forward, still staring. "Hey," I called out. Not loud, just loud enough to let him know that I saw them. "Can I help you?" No answer. I waited, half expecting somebody to stand up and say, "Sorry," or "my kid's ball went over," or anything normal. But nope. Another firework went off and the yard flashed bright for a second. In that moment, I saw the person was definitely inside of my fence line. Not on the other side. Inside. Close enough that if they stood up, they'd be halfway between the tree and my back steps. My mouth got dry. I remember thinking about how stupid it was that I didn't have anything in my hands. I wasn't thinking about weapons or anything, just I didn't even have a flashlight. I was standing there in a hoodie and socks with a dog leash. "Milo," I said. "Sharper. Inside." He finally moved, but not because he wanted to. I pulled him in. He kept looking over his shoulder as we went through the door, like he didn't want to turn his back. I slammed the door and locked it. Then I stood there with my hand on the lock for a second, listening. The fireworks covered everything. That was the worst part. You couldn't hear a person moving in the yard even if you tried. Every time I thought I heard something, another crack went off outside. Milo was still growling, nose pressed toward the bottom of the door like he could smell it. I turned off the living room light and went to the kitchen window that looked out into the backyard. I moved slowly because I didn't want whoever it was to see me. I pulled the curtain back maybe an inch. I could barely see anything. The porch light only lit the steps. The rest of the yard was mostly shadow. Then I saw the shape move again. It slid from behind the tree toward the fence line, staying low, like crawling or crouch walking. At that point, the part of my brain that tries to be reasonable was gone. I didn't care why they were there, I just needed them not to be there. I grabbed my keys off the counter because I didn't know what else to grab. I also grabbed the big metal flashlight I kept in a junk drawer, the one that barely worked and always smelled like old batteries. It flickered when I turned it on, but it was light. I went to the back door again and flipped on the porch light to make it brighter. It didn't help much, but it made me feel less blind. I opened the door just a crack and banged on it with the bottom of my fist. "Get out of my yard," I yelled. My voice sounded louder than I expected, and it came out shaky. Milo barked once, sharp and angry, then went back to that low growl. I waited. Fireworks kept going. Somebody down the street started cheering like they were watching a game. Then I heard a sound that cut through everything because it was close. A scrape. Metal on metal, followed by a quick thud. I looked back through the curtain. The person was at the gate on the side of my yard. The gate that led to the front driveway. I hadn't used it in months because it was stuck. I had to lift it to open it. I knew that the gate made a specific noise. They were working on it. I watched the gate shift, just slightly, then stop, like they were trying to figure out how to open it without making it obvious. The gate moved again, this time maybe about 2 inches. Milo made a noise I'd never heard from him before. Like a concerned whine, like he wanted to go after them but didn't want to get closer either. I did the dumbest thing possible, which is that I yelled again. "Hey, I'm calling somebody." I wasn't, but I said it anyway. The gate stopped moving. For a second, nothing happened. Then it swung open wider, fast, like whoever was there got tired of being careful. I saw the person stand up halfway, and for a split second, the porch light caught their face. Not clear enough to identify. Just pale skin and a mouth hanging open like they were trying to catch their breath. They looked straight toward my back door like they were checking if I'd come outside. I froze. I hate admitting that. I didn't run and I didn't do anything brave. I just stood there holding a crappy flashlight and my keys, with my dog pressed against my leg. Then the person ducked down and slipped through the gate. They were gone. I stood at the window for a long time after that, waiting to see if they'd come back. Milo stayed glued to me, shaking but alert, eyes locked on the backyard like he expected them to pop up again. I didn't sleep much. I left every light on. I texted Kara when she got off shift, and she called me back half asleep, and I remember her saying, maybe it was just some drunk guy, like that was supposed to make it better. The next morning, I went out to the gate and looked at it closely. The latch was scratched up like somebody had been messing with it. There was also fresh mud on the bottom of the gate and a smear on the fence post like a shoulder had rubbed against it. I walked through the yard and found a cigarette butt near the tree. I don't smoke. Kara didn't smoke. None of my friends smoked at my place because Milo would eat anything he found. So I threw it away and tried not to think about it. But the part that still bugs me is Milo. For months after that, he wouldn't go into the backyard at night without me right next to him. Not even to pee. He'd stand at the door and stare out like he was checking for something. Sometimes he would refuse and just hold it until morning. And every New Year's Eve since then, when it starts getting late and he hears those fireworks, he starts pacing and staring at the back door like he remembers. Maybe he does. I don't know. All I know is, on a night where everybody was outside, yelling and lighting off fireworks, somebody walked into my yard and tried to get out through my gate like they didn't want anyone to see them. And Milo wouldn't step off the porch, not even for a second.